Welcome to today's panel discussion. We are from Group Nike, student of MNC Global Strategy and Social Responsibility at Venus University. Today, we will examine a real-world case that has been in the global spotlight for over 2 decades. Nike and its supply chain controversy in Asia. Nike is one of the world's largest MNCs. An athletic brand valued at over $30 billion. Yet, behind the success lies a significant business gap between the premium brand image itself and the actual working condition in the Asian factories it produces its. That is what we are here to unpack today. Allow me to introduce our panelists joining us today. A corporate executive representing Nike Management Perspective, Evan, a government official from the host country, Yuki, an NGO representative advocating for worker rights, Aileen, and myself as an expert in the international business strategy, Andika. Next, let us start from the root of the problem. What is the business gap we are dealing with here? Nike has chosen to not own any factories. They are outsource 100% of their production supplier across Asia, including Vietnam, Indonesia, China, and Bangladesh. The strategy deliver tremendous cost efficiency, but it creates a gap between corporate responsibility and the social reality on the ground.
That is correct. Nike is a design and marketing company, not a manufacturing one. Our outsourcing strategy is a rational business decision. It enables specialization, efficiency, and flexibility. We have a robust supplier code on conduct in a place and conduct regular audits across our entire supply chain.
The audits you mentioned are often ineffective. Some have even been called audit washing. Reports from organizations such as the Worker Rights Consortium show that workers in Nike supplier factories in Vietnam and Indonesia are still receiving wages below a living wage, working excessive overtime and facing unsafe working conditions. The gap between the code of conduct on paper and the reality on the factory floor remains very large.
From our government's standpoint, the presence of Nike and its supplier brings significant investment and job creation. However, we also acknowledge that pressure to attract FDI sometimes lead to labor regulation being enforced loosely. This is a real tension between economic development and social protection.
Okay, next. Now let us map out who the key actor of in this ecosystem. The commercial actors, Nike itself from USA as the brand owner, design and marketing, and supplier factories, PT Nicomas Gemilang at Indonesia, Pouchen from Vietnam, and the other factories. Next, there is global retailer and distributor, and lastly, Nike investor and shareholders. For the non-commercial actors, there is host country government, Indonesia, Vietnam, China as the labor and regulators, and the international NGOs, Clean Clothes Campaign, Oxfam, Worker Rights Consortium, and media and investigative journalism, global consumer with buyer power increasingly shifting toward ethical brands, and lastly, ILO or International Labour Organization. Okay, next. We will now analyze this case through several academic frameworks. First, let us look at Nike value chain.
Nike operate at the highest value at stage of the production chain: design, R&D, and marketing. Physical production is delegated to our manufacturing partners. This does not mean we are disinterested. We continuously invest in training programs and factory standard improvements throughout the Nike Manufacturing Index.
But that is precisely the problem from a value chain perspective. Nike captures almost all of the value at the design and branding stage, while the workers who physically make the products receive the small share. This creates a structural and systemic imbalance.
From the perspective, oh, sorry, next. We need to see the quarter five. Okay, from the perspective of quarter five forces, competitive pressure from Adidas, Puma, and other emerging brands continuously pushes Nike to cost efficiency. This creates a downward pressure on suppliers, which is then transferred to workers in the form of lower wages and poorer working conditions.
Next. And from diamond theory, Southeast Asia has become an ideal production location, not only because of low wages, but because of a major industrial cluster, textile, logistic, and manufacturing infrastructure. The challenge, however, is how to upgrade from being a factor-driven economy to an innovation-driven one.
On the question of authority level, there is indeed a tension between the home office and the host country. Nike as an MNC has a global standard we must enforce, but implementation also depends on the local regulatory framework. We support increase in minimum wage, but the decision ultimately rests with the host country government.
Next, BMC. Looking at Nike's business model canvas, Nike's entire business model is built on cost arbitrage. Their key partners are low-cost suppliers. Their cost structure is designed to maximize margins by minimizing manufacturing costs, as long as the PMC is not redesigned to include a living wage as a cost Nike must absorb. Structural change will remain difficult. I want to challenge Nike's claim about code of conduct. In practice, the audit system Nike uses is often carried out by third parties paid by Nike itself. There is a clear conflict of interest, and when violations are found, sanctions almost never reach the point of terminating our supplier's contract. This is not accountability, it is theater.
That is not entirely fair. Nike has invested over $1 billion in sustainability and labor rights programs since the 1990s. We were one of the first company in publicly disclose our full supplier list, a significant representative step in this industry.
Transparency without accountability is a public relations exercise, not real change. As long as workers do not have the right to organize and bargain collectively, which is actively obstructed at many Nike suppliers, the power imbalance remains.
From our position, this is a genuine dilemma. We need foreign investment to create jobs and drive economic growth. If regulations are too strict, investors will relocate to more flexible country. But if they are too lax, we fail to protect our own citizens. This is not black and white choice.
And this is where we see the dynamic between regional development and regional asset. Currently, Southeast Asia is positioned as a regional asset, a resource being exploited by many MNCs for their own benefit. The challenge is how to transition toward genuine regional development, where the benefit of the investment are felt inclusively by local communities.
We are not resistant to change. In fact, Nike is in the midst of transformation. Our Nike Forward program targets simultaneous reduction in carbon footprint and improvement in labor standards. We believe sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. As a closing statement from the corporate perspective, Nike is committed to continuously raising the standards of our supply chains. We acknowledge this journey is not yet complete, but we believe that collaboration between business, government, and civil society is the key to finding a lasting solution.
From the government, we will continue to strengthen our labor regulatory framework while maintaining a conducive investment climate. We also advocate for multi-stakeholder approach in which workers' voice are heard in every negotiation with foreign investor.
From civil society, real change will only happen if there are binding mechanisms, not voluntary codes of conduct with no enforcement. We push for supply chain due diligence legislation like that now being adopted in Europe, and we support workers' right to freely organize.
Okay, and to close off from an academic perspective, the Nike case is a reflection of the fundamental challenge for facing MNCs in the era of globalization. How to maximize value creation while distributing the value fairly across all stakeholders in the value chain. This is not merely CSR issues. It goes to the long-term sustainability of the business model itself. Thank you to you all our panelists and to everyone watching this discussion. We hope this presentation has given you a comprehensive picture of the complexity behind MNC global strategy and social responsibility. Best regards from our group. Thank you.